Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast, available every morning on Apple, Spotify or wherever you listen. It's Monday, the 6th of January here in London. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up today, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, takes aim at Reform UK leader Nigel Farage in an abrupt U-turn.
Sam Altman in the spotlight. The OpenAI founder talks to Bloomberg about ChatGPT's first 2 years and AI under Trump.
Plus, in a world that's rife with conflict, the market for insuring ships against acts of war is thriving.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
After months of attacks on the British government, Elon Musk now says Reform UK's Nigel Farage doesn't have what it takes and should be replaced. It's a sudden U-turn from the world's richest man, who previously heaped praise on Farage, saying only his populist party can save Britain. In an interview before Musk's change of heart, Nigel Farage was asked about the recent explosive comments from the Tesla CEO, in which he said the Prime Minister Keir Starmer was, quote, complicit in the rape of Britain over his handling of child sex abuse scandal while he was Director of Public Prosecutions. Here is Farage speaking to the BBC.
I think I've made it perfectly clear that I don't agree with everything he stands for, but I do believe in free speech. I think he's a hero, and I said that well before any potential money was offered.
Farage has talked up the possibility of a multi-million-pound donation from Elon Musk. In response to Musk's social media post criticising him, the Reform UK leader described Musk as a remarkable individual, but repeated his position that far-right activist Tommy Robinson should not join Reform UK.
Now, UK business confidence has dropped to its lowest level since Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. Just under half of companies surveyed by the British Chambers of Commerce expect revenues to increase in the coming year. The BCC also says that a majority of firms expect to increase prices over the next 3 months as companies pass on higher taxes and the minimum wage increase. The findings will make uncomfortable reading for Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who has said that businesses stepping up investment is key to UK economic growth.
OpenAI's co-founder Sam Altman has told Bloomberg he doesn't believe Elon Musk will use his political influence in the Trump administration to damage his business competitors. He was speaking as part of a wide-ranging interview in the latest edition of Business Week. Bloomberg's Tiwa Adebayo has more.
Real deception. That's how the man at the helm of one of the fastest growing companies in history described the circumstances surrounding his firing in 2023. Since then, Sam Altman has led OpenAI's ChatGPT to more than 300 million users. Speaking to Bloomberg, the tech CEO says safety is a priority at the firm, which he believes is continuing to make technical progress. Asked about the prospect of working with Donald Trump, Altman made clear he'd work with any president for the good of the country. He expects artificial general intelligence, AI which matches or surpasses human capabilities, to be developed under the president-elect, underscoring the importance of the relationship. In London, Tiwa Adebayo, Bloomberg Radio.
Austria's far-right leader Herbert Kickle is set to become the country's first Freedom Party Chancellor. The Conservative People's Party is now willing to form a coalition with the pro-Russian, anti-immigrant and climate sceptic group after reversing its previous stance. Kickle is due to meet with Austria's president this morning in Vienna to discuss forming a government. It would be the first far-right-led Austrian government since World War II.
Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is reportedly expected to announce his resignation. That's according to the Globe and Mail newspaper. The Canadian publication says the announcement could possibly come as early as today. This would trigger a race for the party leadership, with the leader becoming Prime Minister. Trudeau has been under pressure from lawmakers in his party to quit for months. Scrutiny grew last month after his Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland quit.
Today marks 4 years since the assault on the US Capitol, with Donald Trump downplaying its severity and denouncing prosecutions. More on that story now from Bloomberg's Doug Krisner.
The president-elect has downplayed the severity of the attack and denounced its prosecutions. And he's expected to fulfill his promises of swift clemency for the 1,000-plus people convicted and the hundreds more with pending cases. The question is how such a move would impact democracy and the rule of law. Mass pardons would also set the tone for how Trump might wield the presidency to reward loyalists and, critics fear, punish opponents. This year's January 6th election certification has, for the first time, been designated a national special security event. In New York, I'm Doug Krisner, Bloomberg Radio.
Those are your top stories. On the markets, on Friday, we saw Wall Street climbing to finish higher. Late in the session, we had the Nasdaq closing up 1.7%. Treasuries climbed 3 basis points as well after stronger than expected ISM manufacturing data. In Asian trading today, Japanese shares are in the red. The Nikkei is down by 1.4%. The yen is 0.3 weaker against the dollar this morning at 157.74. The PBOC maintaining support for the yuan with a stronger fix than 7.2 against the dollar. That comes after the sudden move weaker in the yuan on Friday. Euro Stoxx 50 futures 0.5% higher this morning.
Well, in a moment, we're going to bring you more on Elon Musk's latest comments on UK politics, plus why the niche market for insuring ships against acts of war is thriving. It's something that London specialises in. But first, markets are buckling up for a month that has, in the past, traditionally been positive for US stocks.
We're trying to find something positive to say about January, basically, because we're all back at work. Good morning, everyone.
We are. This is the January effect. I mean, there have been quite a lot of bits of research into this, but the January effect has actually faded over time. It's sort of less dominant now, but there's a great quick take explainer on the origins and history of the trend, why it matters, and why it might affect things this January.
Yeah, indeed. The latest MLive Pulse survey, though, still finding plenty of bulls out there in the stock market. 61% of the investors taking part in the survey saying they expect the S&P 500 to rise this year, boosted by Donald Trump's policies, but also the Fed continuing to cut interest rates. But a warning from the Oxford-based investor Steve Digley says we should be bracing for volatility as well. Now, he became famous for making billions during the global financial crisis, and he says threats to market stability are at a level not seen since 2008. He's setting up a hedge fund to bet on this as well. He's saying there are a number of fault lines out there today are even greater than during the financial crisis, and the chances of going wrong, talking about this being a sort of analogous situation to where we were in 2005 to 2007.
Oh, I'm not sure I can remember that far back. It's only the first day back in the office.
It's a good period.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's turn our attention then to our top story this morning. Elon Musk has been a fierce critic of Keir Starmer and the Labour Party since it came to power in July. But on Sunday, he turned on a supposed ally, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, and yet another barrage of social media commentary on British political affairs. Joining us now is Bloomberg's UK correspondent Lizzie Burden. Good morning, Lizzie, and Happy New Year to you.
And to you, Caroline.
Thank you. Why the pivot on Nigel Farage, saying that he doesn't have what it takes?
Well, indeed, it does seem that Musk's becoming a headache, not just to Keir Starmer, but to the right wing in British politics as well. Just a few days ago, he said that only Farage's Reform UK could save Britain. This was when he was calling for fresh elections in the UK. And you had Musk and Farage recently going to Mar-a-Lago, and Farage touting this big fat cheque that Musk was going to write to Reform. So, as you say, it is a big U-turn. But look, far be it from me to attempt to read the mind of Elon Musk. This is the topsy-turvy world of Trump politics, and he hasn't given an explanation so far. Farage has only said that Musk's entitled to his own opinion. So I think the big question is whether Musk's going to back far-right activist Tommy Robinson to become the Reform leader. He's already called for Robinson to be released from prison. Musk seems to be kind of toying with Farage here. Farage has distanced himself from Robinson repeatedly, and we've been reporting that several senior politicians on the right wing in UK politics with links to Donald Trump have been warning their Republican counterparts against endorsing Robinson. But it's still a big question because at the moment Musk has only suggested that Rupert Lowe, the Reform MP, should succeed Farage. So definitely one we're going to watch this week.
Of course, Elon Musk not limiting his commentary to Reform UK. The government has spent the weekend trying to respond to other comments made by the world's richest man about prosecutions in child sex abuse cases here.
Yeah, Musk accusing Starmer of being complicit in the rape of Britain because Labour's rejected calls for a public inquiry into the child sex abuse scandal, even though Starmer was, as head of the Crown Prosecution Service, part of the team that began the prosecution into grooming gangs in British towns. So this is hugely controversial. Starmer doesn't want to get dragged into a soap opera with Elon Musk, though, so he's brushed off Musk's attacks, like when Musk said that civil war is inevitable during the summer riots. But this raises another question. How does the so-called special relationship between the US and the UK play out under Trump and Starmer? And it's an interesting question for the newly appointed UK ambassador to Washington, Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, of course a key Blairite. He'd suggested previously that Farage should be used as a bridgehead between Labour and Trump. The kind of bottom line, I think, is Musk is one of the most powerful people in the world right now. And you could ask, is it any surprise that Musk's attacking Starmer when, somehow the Trump-Starmer call gets leaked and Trump's apparently deranged and going off-piste talking about windmills and Sir Keir is trying to keep him on track? Think about all the Foreign Secretary David Lammy and the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner have had to say about Trump recently. And then you've got the Chancellor Rachel Reeves and the Governor of the Bank of England Andrew Bailey off to Beijing this week to court Trump's nemesis. So is this just Musk being Trump's attack dog?
Yeah, and certainly with inflammatory language. I mean, what hope then does the government have to try to focus on its priorities? Was meant to be talking about NHS policy today for the National Health Service.
Yeah, he's set to give a speechette on the NHS today, whatever that means. I think it's trying to avoid the confusion that surrounded all the missions and priorities and foundations and first steps and milestones that we've had in 2024. There definitely seems to be a deliberate focus in 2025 on the domestic agenda because, as we have reported, Starmer travelled a lot last year. We've crunched the numbers and he was abroad more than any of his immediate predecessors in their first 6 months in office. So you kind of had to wonder at times why he was bothering going to some of these events when there were hardly any other high-profile leaders like at COP in Azerbaijan. And many of the leaders that he's met on the international circuit have waning influence. Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau in the news this morning. And being absent when the economy is in the doldrums is hardly a look that you want to bed in. So instead, as I say, it's Rachel Reeves going to China this week. And it hasn't been, interestingly, decided who's going to represent the UK at Trump's inauguration.
OK, Lizzie Burton, our UK correspondent, thank you very much.
Now, in a world that is rife with conflict in Ukraine and the Middle East, the market for insuring ships against acts of war is thriving, with London specialising in maritime insurance. Joining us now is Bloomberg's oil and derivatives reporter Alex Longley, who has a long piece on this out this morning. Alex, thanks for your time. How important is this war insurance market for global trade?
Well, in the world we're in at the moment, it's become ever more important. I think perhaps the most recent, although it's a little while ago now, but the diversions that we've seen in the Red Sea that have continued even in their kind of 12-month anniversary to hugely disrupt world trade. You need this backstop of insurance to ensure that goods are getting from A to B. Now, insurance in London has existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. War risk insurance is nothing new. But the scale of some of the conflicts we're seeing and the risk of products getting trapped in different ports across the world or different regions has meant that this market has sort of begun to thrive and entered a kind of new level over the last couple of years, particularly following the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And then, as I said before, the disruption in the Red Sea last year.
So what sort of growth are we talking about? How big is the market now?
Well, It's one of those markets where, much like many things with Lloyd's of London and the insurance industry, it's hard to pin an exact number. But some of the people we spoke to say that the global market for marine hull war risk insurance, so that's the risk of your ship being hit in an act of war, is reaching up to $1 billion at the moment, and that'll be up from just a few $100 million a couple of years ago, the low sort of hundreds. So we're seeing a significant volume of growth there, and that's just in the premiums that are earned. Now, the risk that comes with that is exactly how many ships don't get hit, right? Because the risk of conflict is that you're in an extremely dangerous global maritime environment. So although the total premium written has been very, very large, and certainly in the last couple of years we've seen some good returns, I think you're seeing insurers starting to worry given that kind of exponential level of growth that we've seen over the last couple of years.
And surely insurance is a long game. I mean, what are the risks? Presumably there must be some dangers in offering cover against acts of war. And we started talking about, how rife conflict is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a couple of dangers here. I think the first one is, as we've already seen last year, we've had some of those incidents in the Red Sea that have led to not only vessels sinking, but also crew deaths and also kind of pollution events around them. That's obviously the biggest risk for the insurers, and we've seen a few of them. And I think some of those companies are expecting to see sort of the effects of those ripple through to their results coming into 2025. The other effect is that, frankly, this market has been doing so well, it's attracted a whole host of new entrants, different types of players that weren't previously there, but that can now provide cover. And many insurance officials say that the big risk there is that they take on more sort of cover than they perhaps should be, or are slightly less worried about the cover that they're taking on because of the money they're making, and that has a ripple through effect as well and leads to some more losses within the market. Insurance is a very cyclical business. When times are good, lots of people tend to flood into the market and provide new cover, and then that kind of tends to naturally dampen it back down again. And some worry that we're kind of at the start of, we're reaching the peak and are at the start of a possible downturn in the next sort of 12 to 18 months, but that will all depend on how risky the world remains and whether we remain kind of rife with conflict.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.